Why for the clan is what my father always said. He meant that I should starting the story. If we reach 1,000 by my brother's side, among those who sub 25 people, a lottery of $10 will be now. Let's go to start the story. What a priceless sight, says the owner of a white raincoat and very peculiar shoes. The young man raises his head, and we see he blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. A knight fighting off the continent's strongest commanders on his own, says the knight, angrily raising the visor of his helmet. Detonates, lie on the ground covered in blood, as expected of that man's brother. Very interesting indeed, says a long-haired young man with a huge cross on his neck, behind whom there are a number of knights. Say invert. He loudly calls out to the guy kneeling. Boris, he answers, looking angrily at his opponent. Boris laughs, cheerfully looking at Say invert. Who made you do this, he asks, and reaches out with his hand to a dagger with the fancifully sharpened blade. Was it the emperor? Jets of red and black energy swirl around Say invert. That sickening black fog, says Boris, covering his mouth with his hand. It was just like the rumors, said Cyan. Bert gets to his feet and glares at his opponent. It looks like he's ready to pounce on him. You are an assassin from Mist. Boris accuses him. Mist as an organization that is like fog to our Knights of Light, says Boris, upon whom red and black jets are flowing. I will report to the higher ups that I got rid of an impure being that was affiliated with the Heens. Sure, go ahead, says I. And Bert, who is preparing to hit Boris with his dagger. If you even have a mouth left to do that after this, I guarantee you won't even have a tooth remaining after I'm done with you. More as Hakes of fighting stance, crossing his arms in front of him. If you intend to use your secret hour, you better give up now, he says. There is a 98-star magic barrier cast here. Say invert stands opposite, exuding a red and black, or I need to get out of here somehow, he thinks, and reveal the culprit behind this with me. Brother barrier, I'll tear in two pieces, he tells Boris. That's enough. And here suddenly hears a man appears on the stage, and the knights bow respectfully to him. Say invert recognizes him and looks at him in shock, not believing his eyes. Live for the clan, he recalls his father saying. Your brother actuals by extension the clan. Pashalvert successes. Cyan bird success before us, as actual, who was actually discussed. Cyan with blood flowing from his eyes looks at his brother in bewilderment. So that's who was behind all this. He thinks actual is dressed in law jury his armor and holds a huge, richly decorated sword in his hand. Cyan falls to his knees again, and it seems that he is no longer ready to use the dagger that he holds in his hand. You seem confused that I'm here, says I, and he comes close to his kneeling brother, from whom the black and red or emanates. What does all this mean, asks the hero, looking at actual with bewilderment and longing. He looks at his brother with some contempt, and says that he coped well with his duties which Cyan perform, for the benefit of the clan, the people in me, says actual. The hero cannot believe that all this is really happening, therefore I'm just trying to take the burden off your shoulders, actual shamelessly declares, towering over his brother, emitting a red aura. I don't understand, says I am kneeling. Did I do something wrong? Ron actual looks at his brother with hatred. That ominous fog, you're nothing more than a murderer. I can't even call you human anymore, he says. Cyan limply lowers his head and almost lets go of the dagger. You fooled us for long enough, turns the actual, screaming. Can you really say that you don't know your sins? Murder my sins, and doesn't seem to understand at all what his brother is trying to accuse him of. What the hell is he talking about? The hero's eyes begin to burn with an ominous fire. The succession fight within the Empire. The Demon King armies read the war to unify the continent. I help you achieve all that you began. The hero shouts to his brother, whom we see from the back, because serving you as my life. The hero from only grasps the hilt of his dagger again, but now you're abandoning me, he thinks, and rushes forward. I worked like a dog for 20 years under you. The hero's eyes glow with rage. It doesn't matter if my entire body breaks down. Think, Cyan. We see his leg armor emitting red energy, and the blood his body is losing. I will give everything I have right now, he thinks, if it means I can destroy you, emitting powerful red and black energy waves. Santa attacks his brother. Does he have that much mana left? This is impossible, screams one of the knights, who is watching what is happening. Is this even a person? How silly. The hero is trying to kill his younger brother because he's afraid, says Cyan, who prepared a dagger for an attack and put his hand forward. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? After is silent. Cyan rushes towards him with a dagger in his hand. Actual raises his huge sword and deflects 2 blows. Just once, thinks Cyan, who continues to attack his brother. Once is enough, but Actual is very confident in deflecting all the blows he tries to land. The hero's eyes glow with an eerie red fire. His dagger exudes a menacing glow. If I can stab his weak point so that he can't regenerate, thinks Cyan. He rushes into another attack but runs into a yellow energy circle hovering his brother. The hero's amazement knows no bounds. Damn it, Boris, he thinks, noticing that there is a yellow magic circle behind his opponent. You poor bastard. The yellow beam hits the hero's side and he loses his weapon. The dagger, still emitting a red and black or, flies to the side. We see that Actual has pierced his brother with his amazing sword. I wanted to do the favor of giving you a painless that since you are my brother, but you have shown your true colors, he says. He looks at his victim with hatred. I knew what you are from the start. A demon, says Actual. It's a good thing I never trusted you to begin with. Cyan looks At his brother with wide eyes, Actual kicks him to remove the sword from his chest. The hero flies away. Let's go, Actual tells his knights, and they obediently carry out the order. Damn it, thinks the dying Cyan lying on his back and looking at the sky. Is this really the, and for me his eyes slowly close. What a stupid life I've lived. He opens his eyes again. I'm stupid, he thinks. Actual in his luxurious cloak stands with his back to us. Cyan swoops down on him with a dagger in his hand, hoping to kill him. The hero's face twisted with rage. The blade of his dagger is a millimeter from his brother's throat, but Actual somehow deflects the attack and flies away under the pressure of powerful yellow energy. Young master Cyan the hero tries to clear his throat and holds his throat as if checking whether it is intact. How long do you intend to sleep for? A pretty green-eyed girl asks the hero irritably. Get it together, you need to get ready. Young master Cyan asks this question with an intonation so unnatural for the situation that the maid flinches and surprised. What are you doing here? He asks the hero. Suddenly he realizes one very strange thing. He saw her almost 20 years ago, but it seems that the girl has remained exactly the same as she was. That it seems that time has had no effect on her. Cyan examines the room he is in and realizes that this is the room in which he lived as a child. Even the furniture is arranged exactly the same. He grabs his face. Wait a minute, he thinks, I'm becoming a child again. Young master and angrily calls out to Emily's hero, and he flinches in surprise, continuing to hold his face. You're stalling because you don't want to go to training, right? The girl leans threateningly towards the hero. Make up your mind and get going, she demands. First raining, Cyan asks in fear. What kind of train is this? Cyan sits on the bed and the maid stands in front of him with her hands on her hips. The bright sun is shining through the window. Vertclan Duchy in front of us is a medieval building with a large sharp spire. I am certain I'm back in the duchy in the past, thinks San, looking at the building. There is concern on his face. Is this like the thing where your life flashes before your eyes but for death? He thinks. I remember 27 years ago. Foundation year 985 March. Once at Cyan and Emily, I'm standing in a huge square in front of the palace. A little further there are two thrones in a throne of knights. It was a year before I entered the academy. Every year the duchy holds a dual training session. We see a man and a woman sitting on three guns. Standing next to them is a tall man and an elegant long cloak. My father, who is the owner of the duchy duke, attends the event, making it a very big deal. My opponent is Krantz. He is the same age as me. My half-brother, his mother Margaret, or is the duke's wife. Thanks to that, Krantz received a lot more attention despite the fact that we were both the youngest. I was a bastard-eyed son, and after being mocked in this fight, I became a laughingstock to everyone. The hero remembers his father, who tells him not to try anything and leaves, turning away from him. This duel was the reason my father stopped paying any attention to me. To the hero recalls, why don't you just give in? Emily whispers in his ear, it's okay, I just have to win, and says decisively. Even the maid treats me condescendingly. He thinks the hero is thinking about something. He has a very simple weapon in his hands and he listens to his feelings. It's just a rapier, but it's so heavy. He thinks, my strength is the same as when I was this age. This sensation, it's definitely not a dream, nor is my life flashing before my eyes. Looks carefully at his hand, which holds the hilt of the rapier. I've never even heard of a magic spell that is capable of creating such illusions. Either he thinks Cyan is trying to figure out if he really ended up in his own past. You didn't run away, yes? Asked the hero standing opposite Krantz. Then maybe I can't change the future of Cyan. Thinks. He looks somewhere to the side thoughtfully. The Duke raises his hand and says we can begin. Krantz rushes at the hero. Where are you looking, idiot? He asks, and passing smiling from ear to ear. The stepbrother raises his weapon above his head to strike. What is he, a snail? And looks at his brother. With some bewilderment he makes a movement with his foot and Krantz immediately feels the effect of this movement. He flies past the hero, loses his balance and strikes with his sword not at the enemy but at the floor. You're avoiding like a coward, he says, gritting his teeth and anger without leaving his place, and strikes and easily knocks the sword out of his stepbrother's hand. Then, with a kind of indifferent expression on his face, he kicks his opponent in the shin. Krantz screams loudly and pain. He grabs to his throat. The duel will be over. But this does not suit him. The hero tightly grips the help of his rapier. He recalls that at this age Krantz constantly bullied him for his own amusement. His brother mocked him later at the academy, so I need to really stop him down, so that he can never try to do anything to me again, thinks Cyan. Anger appears in his eyes. He approaches. He's helpful brother lying on the floor. In this life I will now paper pap on my own for myself, he thinks. Krantz screams and fear as he looks at the hero's expression. Krantz lies and conscious on the floor, phone coming out of his mouth. The result of the duel was Krantz his loss. The Duke ordered me to see him and even free up his schedule was my victory in the duel that impressive say, and somebody walks next to the stern knight who stood next to the Duke and Duchess during the duel. I even have a high-class knight York, and who was directly affiliated with the Duke escorting me. Thinks Cyan. The Duchess and her mate come towards the hero. Seems like she was talking to him about her son. The hero understands. She looks like she stepped in shit. Is Krantz okay? Say, asks the one when Margaret looks at the boy with a very angry expression on her face. You have the audacity to ask such a question after beating your brother like that, she asks angrily. How thick-skinned of you. That's how duels are. See you say, and answers with a smile on his face and moves on with the knight accompanying him. This is why bastard shouldn't be treated like legitimate children. He hears behind him these words cause him the pen. The Duchess never stops pouring out her venom. Like mother, like son. She says it's all because the mother is some dirty whore. You should be on the streets begging for food. Instead do you dare to put up a fight? You should know to be grateful. She crossed the line, thinks San. His eyes burn with anger. Should I kill her? No, I know better than any one else how to make her suffer. Science miles. I am going to torture her slowly, like painstakingly slowly. You know I'm going TJ, the academy, as well along with Krantz. He asks Margaret, what exactly do you mean? She asks with hatred. I'm sure you want your son to graduate with his limbs intact, right? The hero threatens the Duchess, an ominous grin appears on his face. I guess you're not that worried about him. Duchess Margaret is furious. Shameless scum, how dare you say such a thing, she says, and raises her hand to slap the young scoundrel. I beg your pardon, Duchess, says Yorkham calmly, and covers the hero with his hand protected by powerful knightly armor. The Duke called him with urgency, he explains, so I don't think we coddle anymore. The knight's eyes glow with determination. We'll get going now, he says. The Duchess looks angrily at her offender, whom York and defense, but remain silent. Cyan meanwhile smiles mainly into his fist. The Duke's orders are absolute. He thinks I am being protected by the guard knight who was given that order. We sees that York and is determined to carry out the will of the Duke and protests. The hero, a knight who once have maybe even to the Duke's wife. How nice and reliable. Come in, it sounds from behind the door. You knocked on. The hero enters the Duke's office and greets his father, who is standing with his back to him. From Cyan, the youngest child, and the house vert greetings, father, he says. He bows and thinks about how in his previous life he had not met the Duke alone for 15 years. Duke Willie Ashurt, sit down. The father tells his son, the great feudal lord of values or western feud of this Ashraf empire. The world calls him by a different name, guardian of the continent, the hero who stopped the invasion of demons for a long time with the help of his remarkable magic power and worldly wisdom. This man shouldered to responsible city, no one forced on him, until his very death in battle against the invasion of the Demon King's army. All he wanted was there to be peace in the entirety of the continent, but my memories of him are different. The hero thinks. He sits on the sofa humbly, placing his hands on his knees. The Duke sits opposite, with his arms folded across his chest, as a man who utilizes his free will to decide on living his whole life serving others. Our stupid man. Cyan, feigning absolute humility, looks at his father. The Duke looks thoughtfully at his son. Your eyes precisely followed the sword and dodged it, he says. Say, and asks again, and surprise before us as the moment from a duel that took place a little earlier. The moment Krantz ran at you, says the Duke. You looked straight at the path of the swinging sword and turned your body to dodge it. We see that the weapon passes centimeters from the hero's face. The Duke looks sternly at his son and asks where he learned to use a sword so well. He is as always very insightful, thinks Cyan. Looking straight into his father's eyes, he declares that he did not study anywhere in particular, but only trained on his own at night. The Duke doesn't believe him. From what I know, you've never had any interest in swordsmanship, he says, looking carefully at his son. Why did you hide such excellent skills? Science scratches his head. I didn't want to attract unnecessary attention to myself, he says. Despite that, you really went all out at taking down Krantz. The Duke reproaches his son. He continues to stroke the back of his head. Was it why you did after that unnecessary? The father asks, referring to kicking the man lying down. Cyan, looking from his father, comprehends his words. His intention behind that question seems pretty perusing. Is he trying to get a feel of what I'm capable of? I wanted to prove myself, says the hero. We see that on the table separating the interlocutors there is a pair of scrolls. Prove what? Asked the Duke. That I'm better than Krantz. Say any answers, looking straight into his father's eyes. Even though we share the same blood, which is also what I concluded as the meaning of the duel. The Duke did not seem to expect such an answer. The hero looks at him, waiting for what he will say. William Vert laughs. He is very pleased with what he heard. Excellent, he says. A clear, ewer and concise answer that shows off your level-headedness. I didn't know you were so talented. I'm delighted you'll become a great, reliable support for the actual. One day. We see the ghostly figure of his son, whom he is referring to. These words are very unpleasant for the hero. Why should I become his assistant, he thinks, and remembers how his brother pierced him with a sword and a past life. The Duke, however, looks at his son with satisfaction. Everything is as always. He thinks he's still obsessed As ever with actual, the hero clenches his fists, and, anger, it's not exactly that trophy, says the joyful father, but I want to reward you for this duel. If you want something you can tell me that I will destroy everything. The hero thinks with anger in his eyes, ever the thing that damn actual tried to create. He looks at the dude, and says that he wants you said, that you want to go to the battlefront. Emily shouts indignantly at the hero. She is beside herself with rage. Yeah, that's right. Cyan, who is sitting on the edge of the bed, answer is quite calmly, nothing certain. Yet though, are you crazy? The girl screams. Do you have any idea what kind of place is it? Says she, clutches her head and horror, and reports that it is infested with evil demons and terrible beasts. Values the western feud of the Ashef Empire. This is the only place in the entire continent to be called a battlefront, even in that the Lemmy, a valley that can be called the front line, is a ferocious battlefield, where the battles with demons have been going on for hundreds of years. Because of that, my father, you're the hero thinks, who stubbornly opposed it from the start, gave me a condition. We see how the hero's meeting with the Duke. Cyan looks at his father's back, and there's a scroll on the table. The guy had to show within a month that he was worthy of going to let me a valley, and looks at his palm and thinks that no one told him the criteria by which this will be determined. He clenches his fist and brings it to his eyes. I just got to raise my physical strength as much as possible in the time I've been given. He thinks I'm still weaker than my peers. The hero remembers his duel with his brother. At least I'm lucky enough to have the same combat sense as I had before, regressing, and a little amount of magic I sense within me. He thinks. Cyan looks at his palms, which emit a faint red-black glow, that his character mystic of him. If I train this body as per my capability, I can definitely make good use of it. Great, and going to start training right from today. Someone screams from behind the open door. Someone angrily calls for a hero. Cyan looks at the one who entered and begins to pronounce the name in surprise. Alice. In front of him stands a spectacular girl with purple hair, who looks menacingly in his direction. Palace takes the hero by the chest and lifts him into the air. Power you, miss Alice? Emily asks, trying to defuse the situation, but no one hears her. Are you crazy? Alice screams. I heard you ask father to send you to the battlefront. Alice, let me go first. Bagsan, whose head is tilted so far back that's about to fall off the girl. Let's go. Oh, of her brother, and he falls to the floor with relief. It looks like defeating Krantz. Got to your head? Alice angrily declares. This won't do. Come with me to the rooftop, the girl demands, looking angrily at the hero. In front of us as a medieval building, one of the windows of which is brightly lit. Science stands opposite his sister, a rapier hanging at his side. Now we start when we draw swords. That girl declares. I'll let you go to the battlefront if you can endure my attacks for 3 minutes. Do you really have to go this far? Alice asks, and with concern on his face, the girl looks at her brother with anger. I'm not hearing any of that, she says. Just answer one question. Are you after the family's title? There is suspicion and threat in her eyes, so that's why she's doing this. Siam realizes, looking at his sister, I'm not interested in this at all. He thinks so. This is exactly how it is. Alice shouts angrily, get your sword. Her hand is already on the hilt at her weapon. Siam wearily takes his rapier out of that sheath and lowers his eyes. It hasn't even been half a day since my duel with Rance. He thinks whole day was chaos. Stick. Alice takes off. Cyan looks at her, and confusion. The girl strikes, and when it doesn't reach the target, she is very surprised. She looks at her brother, her eyes wide. No way. She thinks he blocked. That he's a 10-year-old, though anger appears on the hero's face. Are you really trying to go all out against your brother, who's 7 years younger? Alice regains her balance after a failed attack. She looks at the hero with bewilderment and sometimes even fear. A rapier has a very light blade. She thinks, yet he cleanly carried it out my long sword's attack. Was he just lucky this time? Alice smiles. You have got better intuition than I thought, my dear Cyan. She says, well, that's it, I'm finished. The hero thinks, looking at his sister, he tries to call. Ends up in front of the girl's face. Alice looks in horror at the blade approaching her. Damn it, thinks the angry Siam. As rapier twirl by his opponent is ready to jump out of his hand. After the collision, the hero flies back and appears to lose his balance a little more, and he will fall off the roof where the spring is taking place, having recovered from his experience. Say, and with relief he is swatting on the edge of the roof. That could have been very bad, he thinks. Had I not twisted my sword midway, I would have killed her. Miss Swordsman. Ship's Hill. Thick fog mostly consist of skills meant to kill immediately. It's hard to fight without killing, because my strength is lacking. Cyan, sweating profusely, looks down. How much is remaining of the 3 minutes? He thinks. The hand that holds the rapier trembles, and compensating for my weak strength by abusing the sword with my mana. The hero thinks, but I'm almost at my limit. Alice, sighing heavily, whispers under her breath, earth, wind, come to me and act as my sword. Cyan looks at her in amazement. She's going to use 6-star magic. He thinks. The girl sword glows, and she take her fighting stance. She is reported to use the Akko blade skill. Is she going to kill me? The hero thinks. I thought she was suggesting regular sparring. Alice, meanwhile, really seem to have lost her mind. The only thought spinning in her head is that she must under no circumstances lose its overthink Cyan. I can just tell by the look in her eyes the hero sits on the roof by and thinks that he will fall down, even if he manages to block his sister's attack. I'll just have to trust that this will work. Satan dumps off the parapet and he rushes towards his sister, who is already raised resort above her, pointing its tip into the sky. The hero rushes forward. Please, he thinks. Show up. Alice swings to strike. You can stop it, shouts. Then a right who actually appears between brother and sister. With one hand he grabs the hero by the collar, lifting him up, and with the other he reflects the blow that Alice has already dealt. A bright white flash flashes over the city York and looks at the girl with a very displeased look. Miss Alice, he says, you're being too harsh against a much younger opponent. The knight still holds her sword. Cyan, who has been and held by the collar by York, and like a puppy looks very happy. I was wondering when he was going to appear, he thinks. Alice gasps for air. She seemed to be starting to come to her senses. She rushes to her brother, and sobbing hugs him. Sorry, Cyan, she screams. I must have lost my mind for a second there. I just wanted to stop you from going to battlefield to stream from her eyes on to her brother's shoulder. I was too obsessed with that. Cyan smiles. This he's very like her. He thinks she always tries so hard with everything. My sister was the elite of the elites who got an ass, and all subjects in the Royal Academy were all the talented children gathered, whether they be talented and swordsmanship, magic, or other fields of study. On top of that, her beauty was astounding, so people called her God's child from a young age. She was trained in swordsmanship. She was mentioned as being the future guardian of the continent, along with the oldest son. Actual over but India. Long after joining the Night of Light, she was killed. Cyan clings tightly to his sister with his fingers. I missed you, Alice, he thinks. This time I will pretty act you. The girl senses something unusual in the behavior of her brother, whom she holds in her arms. Cyan, she calls him. That Alice turns to the knight, who only prevented a real tragedy. Now that I think about it, weren't you the Duke's guardian? Knight, she asks, but the Duke just left for the war. I am carrying out the Duke's orders to protect the young master for a while. You can reports that currently, although I couldn't tell you because I was supposed to carry that out in secret. Cyan smiles, continuing to hug his sister. I felt his presence ever since I left the Duke's office. He thinks, would he not have shown himself if I continued to not notice him? It looks like the hero's eyes are closing, but why did father tell York? And secretly he thinks. Alice jumps in surprise, Rise, realizing that her brother has fallen asleep on her shoulder. Then a very kind smile appears on her face. He's essentially still a little child. She says, it's night over the city. Incredibly bright stars are shining in the sky. The next day Alice returned to the academy. Apparently she had come back just for a bit to see father before her graduation. Cyan is doing push-ups in his room. 9, he says, pushing himself off the floor with difficulty. 10, he felt he needed to get stronger, so he had been doing a lot of physical training over the past 2 weeks. Cyan, exhausted, falls to the floor. But he can't do more than 10 push-ups. It seems that he has hit some kind of ceiling above which it is impossible to jump. But in a past life he was superbly developed physically and resembled an ideal athlete. We need to find the solution, says I am. Emily enters the room. There's a package for you from Miss Alice, she says through the hero asked joyfully. The maid holds her nose. What is this? She asks. It smells just disgusting. It's hellhound's blood that I asked her to get for me. Think. Sand in front of us is a green bottle containing the blood of the creature shown above it. It's a rare item that can only be found in Lemmy Valley, but it seems the rumors that it's in the black market were true. The infernal liquid pours into the plate. The blood of demonic beast is considered poisonous because of its sickening smell as well as the feeling of burning upon consumption, but it actually permanently increases the mana and strength of the person who consumes it. Cyan imagines what kind of strong heat will become. Most people think that this is just a rumor, but I know that it's true from my past life experience. The hero fix. Young master, are you really going to drink it? Emily asks with disgust. Saying confirms this by holding the plate with both hands. His mouth is watering. Don't worry, Emily, he thinks. I'm the only paid person who was able to adapt to your cooking skills. He brings the plate to his mouth and quickly drinks the entire contents. I can't remember the first time he thinks we see exactly what Cyan means. It's an absolutely sickening purple mass. Was it a mushroom soup? My heart stopped for a moment after a single bite of that thing. Compared to that soup, this is. Sam puts the plate on the table. It's delicious, he says, but literally right. Though the hero feels that something wrong is happening to him, his eyes widen. Some liquid flows from his mouth. He calls the maid without looking in her direction. The girl responds, I'll take a walk, say, and tells her. His eyes glow with some strange energy. Let's see if it worked. The hero thinks Cyan is running somewhere. He runs up to some heli and looks at the city below him. It's been a while since I came here, he thinks. I've been waiting for this day for the last 2 weeks, the moment when you're and is not here for his regular reports. The hero has a very happy face. I came to this place often when I wanted to be alone, he recalls. Then one day actual received a divine revelation from the god of light, Lumumba. I'll say and goes somewhere between tall trees. He said that an ancient temple is hidden somewhere in these mountains. The hero crouches as if trying to find something. I didn't really fully believe it, but there was really a place where the flow of mana was concentrated. Recall Sam, of course, the divine revelation has yet to come. The hero whose hand emits a terrible red-black glow reaches out to the ground. So on the I know about this right now say, and puts his hand on the ground over the surface of which is bloody energy begins to spread. A devilish malice appears in the hero's eyes. Actual, I bet you can't imagine what I'm doing right now. That ground cracks, and then a tunnel appears in it, at the end of which some kind of light is visible. Let's go, says Cyan. It's this rent from the last time I was here. Cyan thinks going down the stairs. This place was an ancient temple that served the god of light. Lumen dull, until all of the history on this land was erased because of the goddamn and war that happened 300 years ago. Below, under the hero, something like a meeting hall appears. A bright source of light is visible on the altar between the columns. Seattle looks at this picture and thinks that no one could imagine that all this could exist inside the mountain right behind the castle. The light comes from the hilt of a sword which point down stands on a pedestal with some kind of inscription. I see and think, Cyan, the owner of this temple, we're apparently talking about the beautiful sword that we now see. 999 before foundation, August 12. If humanity finally succeeds and driving out the Demon King's army from Belly is, the Demon King's army was far stronger than the humans, but the humans found ancient relics called that god's weaponry, allowing them to take the wind. One of those relics during dark was an holy sword blessed by the god of light. Luminal, this sword was considered the main cause of humanity's victory against the demons, and I will meet my pitiful death in the future due to the sword, which will be possessed by actual Verthing. Cyan, he stands next to the glowing sword and looks at it sadly. Perhaps there and dark has something to do with my regression, he thinks. Cyan reaches out and touches the sword. Disappointment appears on his face as he execute. Nothing happened. With his hands in his pockets he hicks the sword. He turns away from the magnificent weapon. He ruined my mood. Science has angrily. Let's just take care of business and then leave. Once he walked past the light, there's a shadow that feels rather otherworldly. I found it, says the hero, approaching the shadow of the sword which lies on the floor inside the circle with the cross. He leans over her. At first glance you might think it's the sword shadow, but that's impossible, say, and examines the object carefully. This is no shadow, he thinks. Where there is light there must be darkness too. In the place where the sword was visible there goes now a red and black path leading somewhere. It's a pathway that leads to another room hidden by the altar of light, say, and opens the door and looks inside. In front of him on a pedestal, to it's a dozen steps lead. One can see a weapon emitting a red and black. Or I'm glad to see you, my sword, says the hero. He picks up his weapon, demonic sword. Karen Cyan, with a devilish fire in his eyes, enthusiastically waves his dagger. Good morning, Taram, he says, smiling slyly. Are you still not awake yet? It is he. We're from the hero's face that he does not feel the recoil that he hoped to receive from his weapon. However, then everything changes. Science smiles sweetly. This familiar feeling, he says, it's the best. I want to slay something right now, child. Don't you have any fear? Comes suddenly from the black fog that has appeared not far from the hero. Don't you know what it means to have awoken me? I don't know. Eyes and sharp teeth of this incomprehensible creature. Your body is now mine, it says ominously, and spreads in the direction of the hero who stands with a dagger next to the pedestal. Cyan throws his dagger forward and seems to hit the black ghost. An angry human being appears in front of the hero, judging by her brightly painted nails. This is a girl. You weren't this rash before, says. I am. What are you? She asks in amazement. How can you touch me? The hero's eyes burn with red devilish fire. He smiles. I hold you at this is my sword, he replies. The girl predatory curls her fingers with brightly painted nails. Leave me alone, she screams, and tries to dig her nails into the hero's face. Now she finds herself at a fairly decent distance from him and makes a fighting stance. The for us as a pretty but very angry girl with attractive shapes. Who are you? She asks the hero. Or you the successor? Cyan stands on a date with a dagger in his hand, surrounded by a characteristic blank and red. Or why do I feel areas? Or from you? The girl asks. Right-hand the successor of arrow, says I. In there is an unkind light in his eyes. Your master is back, he says. Bow down, demonic sword. Karam, the girl looks at the hero with rage. You're just a kid, she says indignantly. I can't accept this. She pounces on the hero and tries to inflict at least one blow on him. Cyan fights back confidently. He holds the dagger in front of him. I guess words won't do. He thinks the demonic sword's final goal is to take over the body of the user. He sees how angry the girl is and thinks he has no choice. I'll go a bit easy, say, and puts a dagger in front of him to stop the girl, who rushed at him. A smile appears on his face. We see the message demonic sword control. Apparently Science had this phrase and it hurt his opponent very much. I'll say this just once, the hero says decisively. Why don't you just accept me as your own? Or while I'm still being nice. The girl was nailed to the floor. She tries to get to her feet with an incredibly angry expression on her face. How can you use that? She growls. You arrogant little impossible. To finish as Cyan again pronounces that phrase demonic sword control, his opponent is again nailed to the floor by some unknown force. Yes, Cyan repeats his spell 3 more times, and each time the girl hits the floor, seeing the ridiculous position she is, and now the hero asks again if the girl is ready to obey. She agrees, albeit very reluctantly. Cyan begins to say the phrase again to give the girl determination and achieve the desired result. She calls him her master in front of us as a ease of it, or from which Cyan just came out. Now that I've done what I wanted to do here, he thinks, shall I get back? I have been gone for too long. He walks with a dagger emitting ominous energy across an ornate floor. It's been so long since I breathed fresh air, says, with the lead the dagger, in which, as is already clear, someone lives. We see this creature, albeit in the most caricature form. It's so refreshing. This entity says joyfully, hey master, what's your name? She asks from behind a hero. Cyan say invert. He replies, it looks at to master incredulously. Really chose a kid like you? She asks. Yes, in that past life. The hero answers in a serious tone. Past life? What the hell are you talking about? Care in wonders. I died once, as if nothing had happened. Say any answers her. What the hell? The girl thens to herself. Is he still sleeping? Yes, she asks, as the hero approaches the glowing door, and dark. He'll have to wait 20 more years for his owner. Says, I am. You talk like you know the future, and says Karam, but say, and is busy with other things. For now he raises the dagger to stay like then he demolishes the upper part of the hilt of a beautiful sword. Karan looks at what say and has done in bewilderment. What are you going to do about it? She says. The hero looks at his strange trophy with an unhealthy gleam in his eyes. Who knows? He says, maybe it'll make things a bit more interesting in the future. We see a carriage pulled by a pair of horses, driving along a dirt road. She saw ops. Abruptly sounds come from the carriage. The door opens and say and comes out of the carriage. I can't believe the day has already come. He thinks time sure flies by. Greetings to the do, he says, and both before his father with Arkan standing next to him. I'll ask you one last time, says Willie Spurt. Are you still determined to go to the battlefront? He looks sternly at his son. If you want to back out now, I won't stop you, say, and puts his hand to his chest, and looks respectfully at the Duke. Yes, sir, he replies. My heart already lies at the battlefront. Open it. The Duke orders the knight. Yes, sir, he nods obediently. We see that Yorkin is holding some kind of scroll in his hand. Cyan looks at the knight in surprise. At magic scroll, or are they summoning something? He thinks. Yorkin unrolls the scroll, inside which is a red magic circle flowing with energy. The knight extends his hand with the scroll forward, and some strange entity appears from it, on whose back a streak of fire is visible. We see the pod. This creature with very sharp claws. Hellhound Science seems to understand who he has to deal with. The monster looks really scary, but it seems that the hero is not very afraid of this enemy. There is no fierce hint his eyes. A low-ranked demonic beast from the Lemia Valley. He thinks the knights and father must have had the hard time preparing this test. Knights heaps their hands on the hilts of their swords. This means they are ready to intervene if something goes wrong. Cyan thinks, looking back at them. You must be responsible for your every action. The Duke's as sternly crossing his arms over his chest. So prove how strong your resolve is by passing this trial and showing it to us. Cyan turns his attention to York, and who is standing next to the Duke with a stern expression on his face. At test then the hero thinks that knight placed his hand on the scabbard of his sword. He looks at the hero with slight surprise, arise, and asked if he really asked to fight a duel with him. Cyan, who is half his height, is not embarrassed, and behaves very boldly. There's only 3 days left until the deadline of my promise with my father. He says, I can't just keep swinging my sword in the air. Now can I say, and smiling sweetly, looks at the knight, I want to get a sense of a real fight to help me out. He, as asks. Yarkan frowns at the buy for a duel. Someone your age, like young Master Krantz would be, he says, but this hero interrupt and, mid-sentence, I don't know why. He says, but Krantz runs away whenever he sees me. What a hassle. York, and thinks, looking at the boy, if you insist, so that I will agree, he says, and the hero's face begins to glow with joy, but I will all the fight you with my sword sheath, declares the knight, putting forward the object that he intends to use during sparring. I only focus on defense, so attack me all you want, he says. Cyan, smiling, takes his rapier in his hand. Thanks, York, and he says, after which he adds that he has one more request for the knight. Whatever happens here, please don't tell your father. The hero says, me seriously, that's an order. You can't seem surprised. Although it is very difficult to tell the emotion from his face. Cyan rushes to attack knight. He strikes with his rapier, but Yo concedes at parrying the blow. The knight looks at the boy with whom he is sparring. That was heavy. He thinks, I can't believe this. That was the sword of a 10-year-old. Cyan attacks ago. Then he is very fast. York and realizes the knight looks at the place where the boy had just been, but does not see him there. The hero meanwhile performs a somersault over the head of his opponent, and he does not see me. It seems that the knight understands where to execute the blow. It seems that he was not mistaken. The hero's next attack was repulsed. Cyan throws a series of blows, but the knight blocks them all. The hero is very passionate about this sparring. His eyes are full of energy, albeit not the kindest. He accelerates, jumps up and delivers another blow which again hits the sheath with York and defends himself, as I thought, says I am whose legs we see. I can't win against you yet. The sparring is over. Opponents stand opposite each other. Good job York, and so as the hero thanks for helping me. Great job young master. The knight answers him, surprise visible on his face. I can't believe that, and who was such a weakling just a short time ago has grown so much. York and thinks. The hero smiles cheerfully. It looks like he got what he wanted. The knight looks at his word with interest. If the hunch I had back then was right, he thinks the young master can overcome any trial that comes at him. We returned to the hero's nest, in which he must fight a monster that has emerged from a scroll. Hellhound takes off and runs towards the boy. Cyan watches the approaching beast carefully and prepares to meet it with his rapier. The hellish creature bares its sharp teeth. Her eyes are burning and glowing with rage. Cyan raises his weapon to meet the monster. The hero thinks for a second. With my current strength, fighting a monster is still too much. I got to end this battle as quickly as possible. Hellhound is very close. I'm going to kill it off with this attack, thinks Sam. The hero puts both hands in front of him, and the next second something unexpected happens. At first we only see that monster's head. He has his hand hanging out, and an expression of pain on his muzzle. Cyan is in the air above the monster, and his rapier is sticking out at him. There is amazement on the faces of the knights watching the battle. The Duke smiles. We see that scientists standing over the killed monster with his rapier sticking out in the lead of the enemy skull that feels like a waste. He thinks this much blood could fill a few bottles. If I did something like that here, they think I'm crazy. Smiling joyfully, the hero takes out his weapon from the defeated monster. Impressive, Cyan. The Duke praises his son. Smiling, he claps his hands. And I'll see you at the battlefront, he declares, turning away from his son. It looks like he saw what he wanted and has no intention of wasting his precious time. Thank you, father, says I. And after they'd already departing, Duke suddenly someone calls out to the hero from behind. It's harem. Do I look like a kitchen knife? You, she asks with a very dissatisfied look. No, the hero answers, of course. You're a demonic sword. Why do you say that? Then use me, damn it. The spirit of the dagger as indignant. I need blood to gain strength, please. Just let me have one gulp. Carrying bags circling over the corpse of the monster he just killed. Don't worry, say, and tells her. A bloodthirsty fire appears in his eyes, because soon I'm going to use you to my heart's content. Look forward to that's when you should have woken me up. Harem gets angry. We see a terrible grinning monster armed with a huge axe. There is a cry that these are ogres. She's above the advancing army of monsters. Yellow light illuminates the shapeless bodies of monsters. Threads of energy entangle the ogres. The Duke's order to begin the attack sounds. Knights break into the ranks of monsters, and they begin to strike them with their swords. The monsters are trying to give at least some answer, but bound by yellow bonds they only were powerlessly taking a bath. Of the moment people decisively exterminate the ogres. The fierce battle continues. Cyan, sitting on a horse, calmly watches her family hiding behind the animal. In horror, shakes with fear and screams loudly. Young master, she turns to the hero, bursting into tears. Why did you want to come to a place like this? But Cyan does not pay attention to the girl's lamentations. It's just I'd be back here. He thinks. I feel nostalgic. How does it feel to be in the front lines? His father asks. I'm a little nervous, Cyan answers, without getting off his horse. As you can see, you will never know when you'll die in this place once. The Duke, who has not yet recovered from the hot battle, so don't ever let your guard down. The hero smiles. Okay, I'll remember this, he tells his father. In the frontline situations like this, our dime a dozen. They're usually 3 to 4 battles a day, and every battle has its own detailed response manual with advanced knights as taking care of all the monsters that try to cross the front lines. We see a camp tent around which stand knights dressed in long white cloaks. Say, and looks out of it, lifting the car open. The tent I'm assigned to in this place is in the most rearmost area, where it's the safest, he thinks. Cyan examines the camp through the crack. With the guards here being so disciplined, I won't even have a chance to feed Karam. Do I really have to wait till dinner time? Saya notices that something is happening inside the tent. There is someone rambling under a piece of white cloth. What are you doing, Emily? He asks. The girl pokes her head out from under the pillow. She sobs bitterly. Didn't the Duke tell us? She asks that we won't know when and where we would die. Then why don't you pack up and return? The hero asks the girl. Do you think I can? Emily shouts indignantly. When you can't even do anything without me? We see from the girl's face that she is experiencing extreme mental suffering with the monsters all over the place. She says, if I were to turn tail, who would take care of you? Young master, move, it's almost time to eat. The girl says, leaving the tent with a decisive step. Emily say and shouts after her, what about the cape that I requested? He stands thoughtfully in the middle of the tent and thinks about something. Should I just chase her away? Is this how she treats her master? He says, smiling. The hero covers the doll with a blanket, which he leaves in his place in bed. He looks at what he has achieved and thinks that from the outside it all looks very plausible. Are you planning to go out to exercise even in this place? Cyan hears yes, he answers, turning his face in the direction where that voice came from did I wave you up? Emily rubs her eyes. If you are sure to be diligent, she says the do could be, but he is to find out. Saying covers his head with a hood. Anyway, he says, I'll get going, so please take care of things as usual. I'm sleeping now. Do you understand? The hero asks, preparing to leave the tent. Okay, Emily says, yawning, because this is the frontline. Night guard duties are usually strengthened, and he quickly runs somewhere. An ominous red and black halo spreads around his figure, covered with locks. If I don't move at this time, he thinks, moving around freely will be difficult in front of us as a sign. Thick fog free are to move. Fog sent and crouches down on one knee, taking a fighting stance. If I remember correctly, he thinks, there should be tons of monsters in this place. Monsters, very similar to wolves, actually creep up on him. They looked downright scary. Saliva flows from its to the jaws. It's the perfect place to use care. And the hero thinks a bloodthirsty glint appears in his eyes. Isn't that right, Care? He asks the spirit of his dagger. He glows in the hero's hand and says that he smells strong smell of blood. Cyan throws his weapon forward. Master, I don't think I can hold back, shouts Karam. Quickly, let me cut something down. The wolves, with huge to the mouths open, rush towards the hero. Okay, Karam say, and shouts, an animal grin appearing on his face. We will do it as you want. The hero delivers a blow, the trace of which we see in the air there as merciless rage in his eyes. A Senekir's thoughts soar, rushing thoughts form. The number of races from the blows inflicted increases many times over. We see the wolves they hit. Science sticks the tube into the wolf's body just behind the skull. The monster's blood pours into a wooden mug. Having filled the container, the hero raises it to his lips and drinks the contents, and one go up. A crazy smile appears on his face. Blood flows from the corners of his mouth. This is the stuff, say, and shouts joyfully, it's my first time feeling so refreshed after waking up. Hiram replies enthusiastically, great, we will continue to train this way, says the hero, behind whom new monsters with glowing eyes appear. How long do you think it will take for us to get stronger by killing these much? Asked the dagger spirit. Cyan looks thoughtfully into the distance. Don't worry, he says, the night is young and there are plenty of monsters, and turns around and we see that in front of him as a whole army of various monsters. Oh, I'm getting exited, says him to his master. A small procession moves slowly along the night road which runs under high cliffs above. One girl sits inside one of the carriages. I still think the front line is too dangerous. Someone owls her. Why don't we turn back? The girl looks out this window with her hands folded on her stomach. I told you not to treat me like a child, she says, displeased, and the royal princess of the empire on the girl's neck has a magnificent pendant with a large gemstone. How many times must I tell you that I'm bound to meet duty to assist father in his tours? Asked the princess. We see her interlocutor. This is a girl in a black cloak and with purple hair. I really will get mad if you mention this again. The princess warns her. The girl humbly says that she understood and will not do it again. Oh, that reminds me, she says, changing the topic of conversation. There's news saying that the young Gus, son of the Vert family, is on the front lines. He should be around the same age as you. The princess, surprised that Duke Vert bought his youngest son, she asks the Duke wasn't really going to bring him. The kid volunteered himself. The maid says, smiling, you guys are about the same age, so you should try to get along. The princess angrily turns away and looks out the window, and, not interested in such trivial things, she says irritably, forget it, I'm going to get some sleep. I see, princess, the maid answer is a shame. Italy. Suddenly the princess turns to her again and asks what the guy's name is. It seems Cyan. The maid readily answers, I'm pretty sure he's called Say. Invert. The princess thoughtfully repeats the name she just heard. She looks out the window. Endo again. Cyan Vert. Then we see a strange bird with a human face receive a fatal blow. Check if there are any wounded. The Duke shouts, feathers circling around him. Everything is fine, answers the knight standing next to the defeated griffin. Great, then let's hurry back, says William Vert. Yes, sir. The soldiers of his army are responding. The Duke look somewhere thoughtfully. We see the tip of a sword that has just been pulled from at that feathered monster. It becomes clear that weapon belongs to the hero. He puts it back into it. She then looks thoughtfully at the creature with a human face. How are you adjusting to life on the front lines? The Duke asks his son. He looks at him in surprise. I'm learning something new every day, Father. Cyan answers, bowing respectfully. Is it true? I thought you would quickly ask to come back, says the Duke, but you calmly and endured quite a long time here. I am very proud of you. It is clear from the Duke's face that he is indeed very pleased with his son, and looks at him and doesn't believe his eyes. William Vert turns around and leaves. Finally, it says that tomorrow he wants to talk with the hero and he should come to his tent early in the morning. I have never seen him so kind before. Cyan things looking after the Duke. Okay, Father, he says, making it clear that he understands his request. Near the rocks on which night has fallen, some sounds are heard. Something huge and incomprehensible crashes into the rocks, scattering a lot of large fragments to the sides. In front of us is a leg protected by knightly hot armor. It belongs to the hero, who stands with his legs wide apart. in a fighting stance and holds an dagger behind his back preparing to strike a death worm. He says we see who he is fighting with. This is an incredibly sized worm at one end of which a circle of sharp teeth is visible. They should usually only appear deeper into the valley. Recall, Sam, master, you seem to be struggling. Why don't you let me take over instead? Karam, in the hero's hand, asks him, let you take over? Cyan answers mockingly, you think I'm unaware of your schemes? It's not like that. I swear I'll use it for a bit and then allow you to take over. Promises. The spirit of the dagger before us are some strange bubbles on the purple surface. It turns out that these are healing wounds on the worm that say and is fighting. Do you see that? Asks Karam. Immediately regenerates any shallow injuries. It won't be of any use to keep attacking him. Cyan thinks about it. She is right. He thinks this will just continue forever. At this rate, it's already been a month since I've come to the front lines. I've drunk the blood of countless mnemonic beasts, but I feel that still wasn't enough. That to the mouth of a giant or from approaches the hero, and he realizes that he has no choice. I'll play along with whatever you're planning for now, Karab, he says, looking angrily at the monster. All right, let's go. While the weapon emitting a red black is readily answers. Alert, thick fog, night form, demonic sword manifestation. Many red and white lines appear on the worm's huge body, each apparently hinting at a cut made by a dagger. I'll rip your thick skin. The hero things from the worm's mouth lined with rows of sharp white teeth. Another organ emerges similar to a second mouth to Issa's. Cyan stops being like himself. He hangs in the air, and instead of the head he has a black mask above, which is hair close with red black fire. Another alert, fog sword, 8 fluttering petals. The gigantic body of the worm under which tiny say and is almost lost is crossed out by many smooth red lines. A scream escapes from the monster, his mouth, in which we see streams of sticky blood say, and extends his sword forward as a giant worm dies behind him, fingers protected by an iron glove feel that blood that flowed from the mouth of the dead monster. The conclusion is that it hasn't been long since it was killed. The mana seems quite imposing. Could it have been a demon that did this? Asked York. We cannot overlook this. If a demon was involved, answers the Duke, who in fact examined the killed monster. Inspect the area and burn this corpse immediately, he orders, and is immediately told that this will be done. The Duke looks at the wounds from which the monster died. They seem familiar to him. I have days of who he thinks worldly. Suddenly, the Duke is called out by York, and who has a torch in his hand. He asks him to come up, since he definitely needs to look at what he found. The knight raises the torch high above his head so that his commander can see better. The Duke looks at what York and wanted to show him in bewilderment. This is the same, says Willis. Yeah. As it's a death worm, the knight confirms his guess once again. We see how gigantic this monster is. Who could have slain a death worm like this? The Duke asks, and shock he looks ahead thoughtfully. Could it have been that organization? He thinks. Demonic sword manifestation. We see a girl, already familiar to us, with brightly painted nails crawling out from behind the hero. It lets care empty take over my body. The hero thinks so that she can use or true powers, but she can completely take over me if I let my guard down, which is why me using her to take down just one monster is actually insane. Cyan is thinking while lying in bed. Then he sits up and begins to suffer, clutching his head and complaining that his whole body hurts. It's a good thing I drank all the demonic beast blood. Then says to the hero, and he turns his head in the direction of the talking dagger. It's just your outer appearance, that of a kid. Continues Care. I'm hovering over the young man's shoulder. You don't act or talk like one. Level at which you handle me is too proficient for a first timer. We are shown episodes that allow the dagger to draw the voice. Conclusions say, and grabs the monster by the Lemia Valley too, says Haramcheat. Remembers the many blows the hero dealt in the battle against monstrous sword techniques are that of miss, and it's as if you've trained for 30 years at least. Continues the dagger. Plus you said you've already died once. No, a smile appears on Karen's face, and certain now she says you are aggressor, right? Say, and looks at his weapon in surprise. Does imply that if I say that I already died before? He says in bewilderment, I thought I made it obvious enough. How's it obvious when Evan explained? Shit is angry behind the back of the hero. I am too lazy for answers. Siam, anyway, killing someone like you must have been hard. Spirit of the dagger continues to reason. If I were to guess, you were killed by the honor of during dark sky, and listens with a gloomy look to what care I'm saying. There's two possibilities. You are either killed in a duel or betrayed, and I feel it was definitely the latter. Why do you think so? Say, and asks Karam, who is hovering around him. You looked at the holy sword like you stepped in shit. I'd be an idiot if I couldn't tell from that, so your goal must be Re. Event Care smiles, looking at the hero's thoughtful face. Either way, keep this in mind. She says a threat appears in her eyes. If I catch you faltering or losing, I'm going to swallow you up. Saying delivers a sharpened quick blow with his fists, causing the dagger to fly off somewhere in the corner. No, your place, the hero says irritably. I am not idiot. Karam says nothing. You can guess from her appearance that somewhere inside she is crying from resentment. Cyan, smiling secretly, looks at Caro. She hasn't changed at all. He thinks she was exactly the same. In my previous life there is some strange commotion outside the tent from which say and comes out what is happening. The hero thinks, looking around him, It seems a bit chaotic today. The next sighted Emily runs up to him. Young master up, she says. Yes, Emily, Cyan answers. Did something happen here? Yes, the girl says with concern on her face. Apparently a high-level monster's corpse was found near the entrance of the valley. Is she talking about the death worm? The hero thinks. A beat of sweat runs down his cheek. It's been so long since there was a sighting. Have a high-level monster near the camps, says the girl holding the cape draped over her shoulders. Anything else, say? And asks her. Emily asks again, and surprise. Was there any talk of anything else? The hero shouts irritably, like sightings of a suspicious person, or something about me. However, this conversation is quickly interrupted. The hero is called out from behind. This is Joachim. He says that the Duke wants to see his son immediately. Cyan looks at the knight and feared. This is a pain. He thinks I couldn't take care of the monster's corpses because soldiers suddenly appeared out of nowhere. We understand that he means the corpses of wolves. Cyan grinds his teeth with anger. My plan was to enjoy a quiet life before entering the academy, he thinks. The hero enters his father's tent in both, respectfully placing his hand to his chest. I, the youngest son of the Verts, greet my father, he says. At the same time he is very afraid that the Duke has guessed who destroyed those monsters. The father turns to his son and greets him. He fears that now questions will begin about yesterday's incident. Sit down, the Duke says in a stern say, and looks at him from under his brows. What explanation can I even offer him? He thinks I will speak directly. The Duke declares to his son sitting opposite him at the table. What did you do last night? I went to bed early because I was very tired. Say. Any answers? Fearfully the Duke plunges into thought, remembering the killed monsters that he saw little earlier. Want to go to bed early, but saw those traces reminded me of science or techniques. He thinks, was I overthinking it? Why are you asking? Says the hero, looking at his father with innocent eyes. He meanwhile remembers that terrible diet worm. It's hard to believe that a child this young could have slain a death worm. The Duke thinks, father, something is bothering you, say, and interrupt his thoughts. I am sure you've heard about what happened near the camps last night, says the father, crossing his arms over his chest. He looks sternly at his son and says that this could be the work of a secret organization of assassins called Mist. The hero asks with fan surprise. It's an organization that has existed since ancient times. The Duke begins to explain. We do not know of their goals, but they have assassinated countless nobles under the excuse of purification. They're infamous for leaving behind a black fog wherever they are, but one day they disappear. They were last seen 300 years ago, but the corpse of the death worm from last night was shrouded in black fog. Black fog is the trace left behind by Enro, the god of darkness, the very god worshipped by the mist and the source of their power. If my assumptions are correct, says the Duke, it was mist that slayed the death worm and another demonic beast. Cyan looks at his father in amazement. That's amazing. He thinks he was able to precisely pinpoint who the culprit was, despite the organization having been last seen 3 centuries ago. We can't guess the reason for their sudden appearance, but you should be careful. The Duke one is some. Nevertheless, I'll notify the Empire about this and investigate further. Yes, father, answers Cyan. Does this mean that he believed me? He thinks, rejoicing in his soul. The Duke ends the conversation on the topic of slain monsters and make no sense for us, and to be involved with such an organization when he is this young. He thinks, do you know who will visit us today? He asked the hero. I did hear that his majesty will be visiting, says Cyan, but was that supposed to be today? Yes, says the Duke, smiling. I wanted to ask you for a favor regarding that. Say, and asks in surprise what exactly we're talking about. The trumpeter blows his instrument, notifying the military camp of the Emperor his arrival. William, where it gets down on one knee and respectfully greets the head of state. I, the Lord of Values, greet the Honorable Emperor, he solemnly says before us. As the Emperor himself he greets. The Duke is sitting on a beautiful black horse. Having arrived, the Emperor descends to the ground. We are old friends, he says, leaning towards the kneeling Duke for away all unnecessary formalities. Willis, frankly speaking, and is a little surprised by this behavior of the monarch. The Emperor immediately turns his attention to the hero. Oh, is this the same child? He asks, looking at him carefully. Say, it also stands in the proper position on one knee and bowing his head as a sign of respect. I greet the Honorable Emperor, he repeats after his father. I am, say, invert, the youngest of the Verts, for oh boy, this young to be residing in such a rough environment, says the Emperor, placing his hand on the Duke's shoulder. Your children are definitely different from the ordinary ones. I was wondering what the favor was going to be. The hero thinks, looking at the monarch, but he just wanted me to appeal to myself as his son. I was always cooped up in the mansion in my past life when the Emperor visited. Recalled Cyan, I'm so deeply touched by father's trust. The monarch, with a luxurious carriage behind him, says that he also wants to introduce someone. A small foot wearing a cute reed shoe appears on the carriage step in front of us. Is a blonde girl, already familiar to us. She bows her head respectfully to those present, and the 5th princess of the empire. she introduces herself, Aaron Severs. The hero thinks, looking at her, the tragic fifth princess. He recalls how his father asked him to accompany the girl for the day. At first Cyan did not understand what exactly he should do, and tried to clarify. Father and son are sitting at a huge table, the surface of which represents a map of either the world or military operations. No need to be so surprised, Hyas, says the Duke, you just need to keep her company. You're the same age as her. You'll see her once you enter the academy too. Cyan is immersed in memories from his past life. I do recall seeing her in the academy, and my past life. He thinks I saw her like a few times between classes. There's no harm in becoming acquainted with someone of the royal family. The Duke explains to the hero, it won't be long, but I just want you to get along. Cyan thinks about it. I don't really want to do it, but I understand father's intentions. He probably wishes that we develop a friendship like he has with the emperor, but he's picked the wrong person for it. She cannot become my friend, saying sadly say, and trudges after the princess. Next to whom stands a maiden o'clock. Although I can't say that, since that's a future only I know of. The hero things before us as a whole procession, at the head of which are the Duke and the Emperor. It's annoying, but I'll have to be obedient for now. Satan decides. An exclamation of surprise is heard next to the hero. He comes from Aaron, who immediately asks why the river in front of her is so red. You mean the blood river? Say asks. In response, what's the girl asks in surprise when she hears the strange name. It's a stream that runs through the entirety of the Lemia Valley. The hero explains to her there isn't any complex reason as to why the water is red. The demonic beasts, who are older, injured, and can no longer fairly compete with others for survival, will instinctively jump into the blood river. The demonic beast, heartsease and bodily fluid, will they